your life and praise and glory. We're thankful for your presence this morning, and I'm thankful to God for every one of you and what you are doing to positively affect the life of our congregation, its growth and its development, because it depends on all of us, not one or any single group of us, but each of us in a cooperative pattern that brings blessings to the Lord's church. Those who are with us as visitors this morning, we are more than happy that you're here. And people like Cheryl Izzard, who doesn't come to church too often, because of her working conditions, we're glad to have her here this morning. One of my strong supporters calls me Dad, and I don't know why that puts Brother Coles. But we are thankful for her presence and the presence of each of you who are visiting with us, and bless the life of those who's responsible for your presence and your having come. We are indeed grateful. We're thankful to have in our audience this morning David Perkins, who is the minister of the church back in Indianapolis, Indiana, and our life goes back further than I want to tell you. And not that it would reflect on my age, it might reflect on his age. Because everybody here knows what my age is, and you may think I'm dragging him into my group. But we're thankful to have David and his beautiful wife that we've known for an equal amount of time. They're in town for Sienna Burry's baptism and celebration. Beyond that, we were here yesterday and were baptized yesterday, and everybody will be privileged to meet her this morning. Now, Sister Burris has been in town for a while, but conditions has not allowed her to be active. She placed membership. Children have been here sporadically, but now she's tightened all of that up. And we asked Brother David Perkins has taught her all of her life. Matter of fact, when Sister Burris was baptized, she was carrying Sienna, and when David Perkins baptized her. And so she's been under his tutelage all this time, but when she got with us and we found out that she wanted to be baptized and that she's going to be a part of another organization subsequent to that, we wanted to be sure that the baptism locked in on what the church is about. Not that we didn't trust David's word, but we took sure steps, and she submitted to class teachers here by our Brother Pointer, our evangelist minister, and was totally susceptible to that, made the great confession, and was baptized. So thank God for all that we do, and that we do the best we can. And I want to ask each of us to accept the charge. We had a great and wonderful meeting with the elders and I met yesterday, and we're focusing in on where our congregation is and where it ought to be and how it's going to take us to get there. And we strongly started with ourselves and looking at us and what we are not doing and what we are doing and what we need to do to move that program along. And lest I forget it, I want to take my hat off in recognition of Joanne Hollingsworth. She probably kicked me after service for saying that, but did a fantastic job last Wednesday for the program that was held here, which was a joint program between Simpson Street Church Christ and Fulton County, and had a large number of people here. And because of Joanne's ability, the reason I'm trying to push her in that direction, to provide ministry for the church and outreach in the community, developing those kinds of programs. She's thinking about it and praying about it, and certainly we've got to move our church beyond where we were and to where it ought to be, and that calls for changes on us. We're not the church of 1930. Even if we were, we got to face the responsibilities of 2012. So I pray for your support and for God's encouragement to me to try to be faithful to the charge and not get caught up inside fires along the way. We have a great congregation, great responsibility and opportunity. And the context within which the church is living and our encouragement and obligation to do ministry there is going to continue to be pointedly so the angle of my preaching. I assume the responsibility of helping prepare us and urge us to go forward with the ministry of God in this day, in this location. So I try to select sermons that I can deliver in a relatively short time, because the listening span limits what the preacher can do. Because after they stop listening, you might well sit down. I'll move on after I tell this story. I'm told of a preacher went to a church, and he said, well, how long should my sermon be? And the preacher told him that he should preach about 30 minutes. And he said, well, what if I go beyond that? He said, you preach for 30 minutes. You go beyond that, we won't be here. So even though you do not physically get up and leave, I can tell when you've been turned off. And I was saying to our elders yesterday, I have no choice but to adjust, our communicative efforts to your reception time. Frankly, if you're going to listen only 10 minutes, I would try to do my best to develop a sermon that I could deliver and complete in 10 minutes. Because after that time, you ain't here. So that's the focus of my message, of my messages, as though that's something new. Today I want to talk about the call and our responsibility to hear and participate in the mission. It's a challenge that we have. And hearing the call. Have you ever thought about, how did Isaiah hear the call? How did Abraham hear the call? How did Isaiah hear the call? And if you cannot identify with how these persons heard the call, you just might miss your call. And I just want to spend a few moments, that's about 30 minutes, on this subject. Now, life comes to us where we are. It has come to us in Vine City. Simpson Street Church of Christ, located on Joey Boone Drive and Newport Street. And the person after which this church was named, street was named, Joseph B. Bone, was a personal friend of mine. And very active in civil rights. And they named this street after him for that honor. And though I didn't like Simpson Street losing the Simpson Street name, we retained the name of the church, I'm honored to know the person after whom it is named. And I take that and do the best I can with it. You open the book of Isaiah, the 6th chapter. It says, in the year that Uzziah died, I heard the call. And he was sitting upon a high throne, the majesty was. I saw the Lord sitting on a high throne. He's visualizing. Lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Our relationship with God, our understanding, our language, has to do with our understanding of God. We need to think about God a lot, pray about God a lot, pray about our responsibilities, and be open to what God may say to us. Now, our fellowship has not encouraged that kind of thinking. But I'm going to say it's germane to what we're going to attain. Because we got to hear the Lord. And I'm not talking about some hocus pocus stuff. I'm talking about relationships that allows us to hear. My relationship with you, my relationship with Braggs, my relationship with my wife and my children allows me to hear them or not hear them. And I ain't just talking about some noise. I'm talking about hearing you and my wife and my children beyond the articulation of the words. What is that person really saying to me? And I take that in seriously. And that helps me in my relationship to the Lord. But Isaiah has to move. And verse 5 says, he said to himself, woe is me, for I am undone. And we could say that ourselves. Because I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of an unclean people. For mine eyes have seen the Lord. See, our predicament cannot be allowed to blur our sight of God. The way people treat us, the way we treat people, the conditions we are in, cannot obstruct our sights and visions of God. Isaiah's in a situation, the year that King Uzziah died, things have got to be done. He has got to do it. And that's what I like to press all the time. It's my responsibility to hear God and walk in his steps. He says in verse 8, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said to him, Lord, send me. That's a commitment that each of us have to have. Not that the preacher has to have. Not that the elder has to have. In relationship to our journey toward eternity and lifting and carrying this church to where it ought to be, all of us have got to say to the Lord, here am I, send me. And it works out in life. My marriage and I, my wife and I cannot build a successful marriage unless both of us say, here I am, I send me. I've got to commit myself to the charges of that relationship. She's got to make the same commitment. As we often say, it takes two to tango. And one does not commit to others trying to carry the whole load by himself. It's like the country wagon was going up the hill, and people were pulling it all they could. And it was very difficult. And they finally got to the top of the hill. And he said, whoa, we finally made it. He said, it sure was tough, sir, because I had the brakes on all the time. Here this guy sits here thinking he's helping by having the brakes on. Now, we who are in the church who got the brakes on need to take the brakes off. We got to take the brakes off our sacrifices, our relationship, our openness, so the church can move. We are the hindrance and are the blessings to the church. And that's what Isaiah realizes, that I must go. And then God says, go and tell his people. Go and talk to your friends and invite them or study with them. Discuss the word with them. A very difficult thing to do in these days. Now, I'm trying it all the time, and it ain't easy. It ain't easy for me to talk to my brethren about Christ as much as I used to could. Because times have changed, their dependencies are different, their interests are different. It's hard for me to talk to the members of the church about church attendance when they got so many things that obstruct that possibility. And I'm talking about recognizing that we have difficulty doing what we know the Lord wants. Over and over. You miss attendance, you're not present. And many times it's not because you're just lying out there, but there's other things that's more important. Take, for instance, on Saturdays, we often trying to do things on Saturday. People who work is the only hopeful free day they got, and sometimes they just can't make it. But the charge of God stands above that. It's a moment for you to ask the question, am I really putting the Lord first? I can't give that excuse. I got to find some kind of way to meet the ultimate needs of that moment and support the will of God. So Isaiah says, here am I, send me. Hearing the call is your being able to say, as Isaiah did, here am I, send me. Now, I'm going to leave Isaiah alone and turn over to another passage you are very familiar with, and that's the story of Nehemiah. Because Nehemiah accepts the call, not just answer the call, not say, I'm over here, God. When you're talking about the call, that's what we're talking about, picking up the shovel or the articles or the implements and getting the job done. When I heard the call from God to preach, I had to do something other than say I heard. And that's what education is about. That's what development is about. When my mother called me out of the woods and out of the pond, when she called, I knew not only to say, yes, ma'am, I knew to pack up and go. Now, if I didn't pack up and go, she had a way to make me know I should have packed up and went. And as far as I am concerned, God knows you heard him, that we've heard him, and we're going to pay if we don't answer. We just got to understand that. It's not that I want to put burdens on anybody, but Paul says, woe unto me if I preach not the gospel. For if I do this thing willingly, a blessing is committed unto me. But if against my own will, a dispensation of the gospel is committed. You know, for years, Sister Bray, one of our Bible students, I struggled with that concept. What is he saying? A dispensation is committed unto me. In effect, what Paul is saying, if I do not do it, but if I do it without hearing the call, I'm just doing what God said because that's what God said. In other words, I got to bring myself to want to do it. That's what you got. That's got to become a part of my life. I want to be married. I want to be a father. You want to be an elder of this church, a member of this church. So therefore, a decision to become is invested with the responsibility that's inherent therein. There's no such thing as my saying to God, I heard the call, but I ain't going nowhere. I said to my brethren, and sometimes we think I'm trying to put you in choices, but it's just reality to me. If I come to Simpson Street, and we're not the preacher of this pulpit, but we're interested in obtaining it, there would be prerequisites that I need to meet in order to do it. And be here on Wednesday night, do evangelistic work, et cetera, et cetera. And, but I say to my brethren here, I'd like to have the ministry responsibilities at Simpson Street, but I can't be here on Wednesday and Sunday. Now, you know about how far I would get with my brethren who presently struggle with me, employing me. I cannot say to God, I hear your call, but I'm not going to preach the gospel. I'm not going to pay the price. Study to show thyself approved unto. I ain't going to do that kind of stuff. God, I don't like that. But I heard what you had to say. I disqualify myself. And that's hard for us to take. We say, what about people who got grave responsibilities? That's the reason God gave you a mind and insight. If you can't do it this way, you'll find a way to relate to God significantly. So Nehemiah was advised in captivity, was advised in serving as cupbearer to the famous king. And he learned from some of his brethren regarding the condition back home of those who were left there, that they were in great disarray. Now, what I want you to think about all the time, nobody or the person who advised Nehemiah of the situation asked him to do anything. But telling him about the deprived condition of Jerusalem was a request. That in and of itself, for me to have knowledge of a need is for me to be obligated to respond. James put it another way. To him who knoweth to do good, not him who's told to do good, not him who's beat upon to do good, or consistently reminded, or come and taken by the hand and shown what he do. Him who knoweth to do good, it is his responsibility. That's the angle from which I'm coming today. You are a body of achieved, responsible people. You own homes, you got jobs, if they haven't laid you off. You got a lot of other things that evidence your intelligence and your level. Your level of intelligence and insights need to become a part of your ministry of the church. And the smartness that you use there on your jobs or whatever the case ought to be used here. Your recognition of authority and the coordination of it in the job place ought to be brought to church. And understand that those who lead you, you have to cooperate with that. We are called to cooperate with that. But Nehemiah was so impressed with the information that he received in that he heard a call. In what his friend told him about his hometown being in disarray constituted a call. Now, Nehemiah could not handle himself with non-involvement after that. Sadness overtook him. I'm not going to take time to try to read all of Nehemiah to you, but you can get it when you want it, and I hope you do want it. Sadness overtook him, and he still tried to do his job. He had trouble doing the job the way he should have, because he was cupbearer to King Artaxerxes. And you are not supposed to go before the king sad. You don't have the liberty, I don't have the liberty as a representative of God of going around looking sad. Or as Arian Hogan used to say, like a cow looking at his last year's calf. But I must be invitational. We must be invitational with our parents, with our communication, and with our demeanor. And that includes our dress, our speech, and our ability to challenge people for God with the totality of ourselves. Nehemiah went before the king, and some would say he got lucky. I would say he got blessed because the king started investigating and asked him what was wrong. And he told him about how his city, Jerusalem, lay in disarray. The walls thereof were torn down, and the place is being overrun. And in result, he authorized Nehemiah to go back and rebuild the city. Now, I've seen times, all of us have seen times, we're in a situation, and what we are able to do, hear me closely, what we are able to do has a lot to do with how that person who is over us, controls us, thinks about us. I think I heard Bruce mention something about politics, political situation. Politics is just loaded with that. If I don't like you, I ain't got nothing. If I like you, I help you get what you need. The king determined what the servant of God was going to be able to do. The servant of God had to so handle himself that the king let him do it. All that I need to do financially and spiritually, God does not expect me to be the resource of it all. In our building program, we collected thousands of dollars from people who are not a part of this church. And I can remember a case particularly, I will not name the person who's responsible for it, but it was like some $25,000 a couple of times. And because of one person. I didn't even know the man. I'd never seen him before in my life, but this person who did had a relationship with him to talk about placing some of his money different places, and that's how the church got that. Church didn't go get it. But the person had that kind of relationship. We have to have a relationship with folk that will allow us to accomplish our objectives. That's the call. I'm called to that, to adjust my attitude, to adjust my personality. I struggle with that, and I'm not by myself. But when I mention about my sermon, my big thing for me with my sermon is to get it where people listen and to present it in an acceptable way, because this business is a business with God, not me. He called on me to speak for him. And I got to be sure I can. Because I can't afford to fail. So Nehemiah, to close it out, assumed this great responsibility went back, started rebuilding the wall, dealing with the opposition of his brethren, Sanballat, Tobiah, and those, when they found out he was coming, they began to set up all kinds of blockage for him. Impressive thing to me about that, they didn't stop him. I listened to a man yesterday just looking for football games, I think, on the TV. And one was on after we left here yesterday evening, and was a man of the Christian church preaching. And he was on the fact that people leave the church because somebody said something they didn't like. And he made an interesting point to me that I think is well for me to think about. The person who offended you or me is still at church. I never thought about that before. He says, you done hung up, and that person is going on with his life. You need to get right so you can go on with your life. And if our life is so precious and technical and sensitive, the word I was looking for. That somebody can say something to me to make me quit the Lord. Something wrong with my faith. Now, if you can't handle the hard times, I like wish Reed was here today because that passage of running with horses is a famous of his, where Jeremiah said, if you can't survive in the land, rough land of plenty, how are you going to do it when the flood comes? If you can't survive with the political situation going on and ought to be making up your mind, how are you going to make it? Because I'm going to tell you, baby, we don't know which way this thing going to go. Now, you may know, praise God that you do, and I hope it goes the way I want it to go. But we may very well end up with another administration. We may very well, the way things are happening. I certainly hope I'm wrong in even thinking in that direction. That ain't where I want to be. But we need to prepare for whatever may come. Because our lives does not depend on Romney or Obama. Because only God can save us. And that has to do with depth of our faith. Nehemiah picked up his stuff and went. His brethren opposed him. They were drawn off to the side. They did things to obstruct him and to make it difficult. And the passage I like, they worked and built a wall with a sword in one hand and a trowel in the other, so to speak. I'm doing this great work. And the passage I like as I'm trying to conclude, I like when Sanballat and Tobiah went down into the land of Noah, oh no, and said to Nehemiah, come down and talk with us. You have to watch your brethren when they want to talk with you. Especially when things are going rough. And when you are trying to lift them to another level and interrupting their pattern of political control. Come down and let's talk about this matter. Now, it seems to me politically at that point, Sanballat and Tobiah needed to talk to Nehemiah to shift the balances in their favor of how this thing going to come out. And Nehemiah somehow divinely knew it. I used to hear G.E. Stewart, and Nehemiah refused to go. And the place where they were calling him was Ono. And G.E. Stewart would stand up. He was the blind preacher. He'd shake his head, says, they tried to get him to come down and into the land of Ono. And Nehemiah said, oh, no. Nehemiah said, oh, no. So you have to learn to say, oh, no. But the concluding thing is, preacher you support, is Nehemiah said at a certain point that he told the people about what they had to do, and they were cooperative in doing it. And he says, so we built the wall. Man, that's powerful stuff. What we've got to say at Simpson Street, so we did what the Lord wanted done. We made the necessary progressive, constructive adjustment. So we built the wall. So we got it done at Simpson Street. In spite of all the hell and the torment and contrariness that people had, we got it done. We built the wall. In spite of the fact of some walking off, some complaining, some want to run the show, some not go do this or that, We built the wall. That means you got to have folk there who are of that persuasion. And I hope that God blesses us to achieve our objective without a loss of any member. And our evangelism will go on while we are achieving, just like Nehemiah, sword in one hand, trial in the other. You've been a great audience. You've listened well. I hope I got it done. Pray God that it will. We're going to stand together. TJ, who's doing a great job in leading us in singing today. I thought I'd say one time I might have to, y'all stand up. Maybe you can't hear standing up. You're trying to hear what I'm trying to say, but I thought about saying to TJ and to his dad when I see him, we're just going to trade him off for TJ. But we hope that you are with us today and you are inspired to hear the call. Whatever it is, God's on your side. I preach the word. Do you believe that? Primarily, are you willing to commit your life to Jesus Christ? That's the big thing. Maybe a lot of things you don't understand, but you got to have the right attitude. Not just an attitude to get baptized, but an attitude to obey the Lord. See? And I find that if the attitude is right in my marriage, in my relationship with you, whatever case is, everything can be straightened out.
That's right.
And that's where we've got to come. I've talked to you long enough. You've been more than patient. My few minutes been over. We appreciate you being here. TJ, come on, lead us on a hymn of invitation as the elders come before us. I've won.